Hello and welcome to another all-new Salt and Light Hour. I'm Deacon Pedro.
She spent her lifetime with unendurable pain. She was partially paralyzed. She was desperately ill for her whole life, and her life was short. She died at the age of 28.
That's our guest, author Kate Clinch, speaking about Eileen O'Connor. And if you recognize her accent as Australian, then you are correct. Kate Clinch is the author of a new book, Every Inch a Saint, which tells the story of Australia's second saint, or maybe we can say saint in waiting, servant of God, Eileen O'Connor. You definitely want to listen to my conversation with Kate Clinch. It's a fascinating story, the story of Eileen O'Connor. So that's in about 5 minutes. And then right after that, our book contributor, Jermaine Bagnall, is back to give us 2 new book suggestions. That's in about 20 minutes. And then
the most recent album I just recorded, it's probably the most worshipful of any album I've ever written, but it still has there's still stuff on there that's, I don't know, a Christian man writing a song about something, and so there's a perspective, and that's kind of where I think I'm, in terms of what I'm writing about, is it's more like a way to view life, a way to view a relationship, a way to view a situation, and it's from the Christian perspective.
I hope you recognize that voice. It is Canadian singer-songwriter Joe Zambon, who's been on this show many times. After a bit of a break, Joe has a new album titled Man of Sorrows, and so we're going to be hearing from Joe in about 25 minutes in our second half hour, and of course, we'll be listening to some songs from that new album. Be sure to download the Salt and Light Plus app. That's the best place to listen to this program, so you don't miss one single episode. Coming up, all about Australia's servant of God, Eileen O'Connor. But first, here's Joe Zambon with House of God from his new album, Man of Sorrows.
I am not a hotel where you come and go, and I am a house of God, your home. And my heart is a gate that I open wide, and you come, yeah, you fill every room with fire, and Jesus in you. Heaven breaks You are the most realest thing that's ever happened to me. You are more than numbers and stars. You're the artist who enters his heart. Jesus in Heaven breaks I walk with my God in the cool of the day. I live under an open heaven and speak to my Father and hear what he says. I live under an open heaven and walk with my God in the cool of the day. I live under an open heaven and speak to my Father and hear what he says. I live under an open heaven in you. heaven breaks Jesus in
We're listening to Joe Zambon with House of God from his new album, Man of Sorrows. And we're going to be speaking with Joe Zambon in about 20 minutes, so stay tuned. Every Inch a Saint tells the story of a modern family struggling with addiction and loss who discover a hidden account of their great-grandmother's connection to Eileen O'Connor, Australia's saint in waiting. Through a dual timeline and a mix of historical and fictional characters, the novel highlights themes of courage, resilience, and the enduring impact of holiness across generations. Every Inch a Saint is written by Kate Clinch, who herself has a personal connection to Eileen O'Connor. And so to tell us more, I am now joined all the way from Adelaide, Australia, by Kate Clinch. Kate, welcome to the Salt and Light Hour. It's so good to meet you.
Thank you, Pedro. It's lovely to be here.
And it's good to meet a new servant of God, a new saint. I mean, she's already a saint, but we're gonna, the church will soon maybe recognize her as a saint. Eileen O'Connor. Tell us about her. Who was she?
Eileen O'Connor was born in Melbourne, Australia in 1892. So back in an era before modern medicine, before antibiotics and effective surgery and good anesthetics. And that's really important because what happened was she contracted tuberculosis by about the age of 3. And it infected her spine, which often happens when small children get TB.
Mm-hmm.
And what that meant was that she had an infection in the bones of her spine, which created abscesses and a spinal deformity, which was quite severe. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, it's called Pott's disease. The spine distorts and it presses on the spinal cord.
Okay.
So she spent her lifetime with unendurable pain. She was partially paralyzed. She was desperately ill for her whole life, and her life was short. She died at the age of 28.
Okay.
So for a prolonged period of her life, she only had use of her left arm. So
really?
She was paralyzed in her right arm and both legs. But when she was 19, she had an exacerbation of her illness.
Mm-hmm.
This was shortly after her father had passed away, so the family became much poorer, losing their breadwinner. Mm-hmm. And during that illness, she had what I would describe in today's language as a near-death experience. What Eileen said afterwards was that she had been as close to dying as it was possible to do without actually dying.
Okay.
And during that experience, she had an apparition of the Virgin Mary.
Right.
Who gave this beautiful 19-year-old woman, who only ever grew to be 3'10" because of the level of her distortion of her spine and how sick she'd been. It stunted her growth. So there she is. She has this apparition, and Mary says to her she has 3 choices. And one choice is to just, die, stay in heaven. Mm-hmm. Another choice is to come back to earth healed and live a normal life. And the third choice was to come back to earth just as sick as she is, but to use her suffering to save people's souls.
Right.
Eileen, at 19, you can see where this is going. She made the third choice. She would dedicate herself and her suffering to saving other people. And during that experience of the near-death experience, she was absolutely convinced she was called to serve the sick poor. So when she came out of that experience and became a little bit better, though
Mm-hmm.
not much. She became firm friends with a priest, Father Edward McGrath, who was called in to help the family because they had no means to pay their rent and were facing eviction. So
Right.
that was why they met. And between them, they were both really compelled to serve the sick poor. And they set up a foundation. Eileen was in her sick bed, paralysed, of nurses to go into the slums of Sydney and look after people at no cost.
Right. That's a fascinating, and that congregation, that's a religious congregation that still exists.
It became a religious
Oh, okay.
congregation. Yes, it wasn't at the beginning. Eileen, it was established by
Right.
Eileen and Father McGrath. There was a lot of opposition from the Catholic Church to this lay woman and this young priest working
I can
together.
imagine.
And
Yep.
so eventually Father McGrath was expelled from Australia um,
Okay.
and
Wow.
Eileen was left to
To continue
run
on
the
her
place
own.
on
Yeah.
her own,
Yeah.
which was nearly impossible, but she did
Right.
it.
She did. And obviously she would have attracted other women who would have joined,
Yes,
these Our Lady's nurses for the
they
poor.
recruited young women who were willing to come and be nurses, and the understanding was always it would become a religious order.
Okay.
Eileen did a lot of the work for that to happen before she died, but she knew she would never see it
Right.
eventuate. That was brought in by her successors in,
It's
in
such a
the order.
it's such an incredible story. Kate, how did you first encounter Eileen? I mean,
Well, you could say it was chance, but I'm convinced it wasn't. I was in Sydney. I live in Adelaide, so Sydney is a plane flight away from
yep.
where I live. Um, and we have one saint already in Australia, Mary MacKillop.
Yes.
And I was in Sydney, went to her tomb, posted a picture on Facebook, and an acquaintance said, "Oh, if you like Mary MacKillop, you should go to Eileen's house." And I had never heard of Eileen O'Connor,
Right.
but she'd moved to Sydney in childhood, so her order was set up in Sydney. And I was able to ring and make an appointment and go and visit. And her house has now been partially converted into a chapel. So her
Okay.
old bedroom is where the pews are, and they took out a
Beautiful.
wall, and that's where they have like the altar. And Eileen is now buried there.
Okay.
And I was just sitting in that chapel, and I was absolutely convinced I was sitting in the presence of a saint.
Mm, yeah. Well, you probably were.
Oh, I have no doubt.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's a very long process to get that actually officially acknowledged by the Vatican.
Absolutely, absolutely. But and you're sort of part of that process. You chose to write a novel based on her story.
Basically, it's a dual timeline novel. So part of it is in novel form telling Eileen's life story through
Okay.
the eyes of a fictional childhood best friend, because I felt that was the best way to convey the story.
Okay.
But that fictional best friend leads us to the other timeline, which is in the present, with descendants of the fictional best friend rediscovering Eileen for themselves when
Oh,
they're
okay.
when they're experiencing some pretty serious challenges and need to hear a message of hope.
Right. Okay. That's a beautiful way to tell the story in a way that maybe people can also relate in their own personal lives, but also connecting with the real life of the saint at the time. Um, why? I mean, I love the title, Every Inch a Saint, but why did you choose that as a title? Why Every Inch?
Because she grew to be about 3 foot 10 inches tall. And there is that saying, every inch, she's every inch a lady,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
that's
It's,
an
yeah.
old saying. And it
Hmm.
wasn't me, actually. It was a friend in my writers group
Okay.
who actually, I was sort of chatting around, what do we call it? and what should I call this book? And she suggested something longer, which I edited down. But yeah, so I don't take the credit for the title, but it works really well.
Yeah, it does work well, and especially now, I did not know that Eileen was only 3 feet tall. Obviously, you're on this mission now. You're sort of her ambassador. You want people to learn about Eileen. You want to tell her story, but maybe you have a personal experience of how Eileen has touched your life. So, based on that, what would you like our listeners, readers of your novel, what would you like them to take from Eileen's story?
I think there are two parts to what the take-home message of Eileen's life is. And one is there is hope and courage that people can have during almost overwhelming circumstances. But the other is more personal to me, and also an example of what can happen. I wrote the first draft of Eileen's novel during 2019 and 2020.
Okay.
And so, we were getting ready for COVID, and I'm not a Catholic. So it's even more interesting that I ended up writing this story.
Yes.
But shortly before COVID started, I found myself compelled to make rosaries. I'd never even handled or really seen a rosary before, so I had to Google on the internet. And it gets a bit funny because it was the same with you. Everyone started stockpiling toilet paper.
Yes.
Except me. I was stockpiling beads. And so I just kept making these rosaries, not knowing what to do with them. And I made them with pretty beads, so I gave them away to friends who weren't Catholic. And they thought that was kind of nice. But then we hit COVID and the world sort of changed. And then I had a pretty drastic medical situation and was diagnosed with cancer. And my interest in rosaries prior to that had brought me to an online prayer circle, which was about praying the rosary. And I can honestly say that prayer circle got me through chemotherapy and surgery. And I wouldn't have found it if Eileen hadn't come into my life. It's like you look back and you think she knew.
She knew. She did seek you out.
And the funniest thing, or the most striking thing, apart from my own illness, was that it was someone who had, Perdita Finn, set up the Way of the Rose. That was the prayer circle that I got involved with. And 3 years after she got to know me online, because she knew in a prayer group that you meet once a week, eventually everyone knows what you're up to. So I started talking about Eileen in the prayer circle, and then I talked about the book and that I couldn't find a publisher. And Perdita said to me, because she's written books, she said, look, you don't know this about me. As well as writing books, I'm a retired editor. Send me the manuscript.
Yeah.
And she knew that Monkfish would potentially be interested in the book. And so she said, send it here. So without that whole experience, Eileen's book wouldn't have got published.
No, I know. Eileen knew. She needed you to tell her story, and you needed her to walk with you through your journey as well. And we needed you also to tell us about this story. Kate, it's been so good to hear about Eileen O'Connor. I'm going to definitely be following her, and I'm sure our listeners are going to be looking her up. And thank you for sharing the story with us, and for sharing your personal story with us as well, because it is also a story of hope.
Thank you, Pedro.
Kate Clinch is the author of Every Inch a Saint, the story of servant of God Eileen O'Connor. Every Inch a Saint will be out in April, and it's published by Monkfish. You can learn more at kateclinch.com.
Hi, I'm Hannah Briley.
And I'm Pat Briley.
And you're listening to the Salt and Light Hour with Deacon Pedro.
Find out everything you need to know about Salt and Light Media and how to support our ministry at slmedia.org. And now it's time for Bookends with Jermaine Bagnall. Jermaine, welcome back to the Salt and Light Hour.
As always, it is a tremendous pleasure.
It's always good to see you I'm very excited about the books you have today. So I'm a little bummed that there's no children's book, but these are two good titles. So tell us about them.
Yes, today we break the streak, but I promise you it will be worth it. The first book is by Father Serafino Lanzetta.
Okay.
It is called The Silent Witness of Nazareth, St. Joseph, Spouse of Mary, Powerful Intercessor, Guardian of the Church. This was an interesting book in the sense of, within the Catholic faith, we often speak of Mary. There's a whole study of Mariology, and Father Lazenta kind of introduces the concept of Josephology, I guess. I might put it.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never heard that word, but yeah, good, yeah.
Yeah, and really, it's a speak on the father of Jesus and of how he played a role in the development of church and in the development of Jesus, and really speaking to the importance of the saying yes. Like, well, often we speak of Mary's yes in being the new ark of the covenant, but this kind of speaks on the other side of it, and how in his yes, he serves, when we speak of the guardian of the church, he's the guardian of Jesus, but in that he also serves as a role model. One of the things that Father Lazenta kind of spoke on, what Joseph embodies, is theology becoming spirituality, but in action. Like speaking of, like, we know of Saint Joseph, the worker of how some of his goodness is served and executed in that, and how that can serve as a good model for us, because in the world, there's, when we speak of the worker, often people might think of, like, say, communism and that sort of thing, around that sort of politic. But in this he does touch upon Joseph's yes, and him serving as a father, but how his work during those silent years of Jesus is kind of imperative to Jesus's upcoming mystery, and really he even introduced the idea, not necessarily as the intercessor, but really kind of putting Joseph at the forefront. We have obviously the Rosary and Mary. We all know, for our non-Catholics listening, that the Rosary is ultimately about Jesus.
Yeah.
Full stop. But within it, we are able to speak to and with Mary on that, and he introduces some, I guess, Redeemer prayers that feature Joseph to kind of bring him to the forefront for Catholics as a whole, but specifically for men too.
Interesting. Yeah.
And it raises a lot of interesting questions for me. As you can see, I'm still working out the book even as I talk about it now.
Yeah, it sounds really fascinating, because you're right. I mean, we don't consider the importance of the role that Joseph played in what has become the church. So that is definitely worth considering. So The Silent Witness of Nazareth, St. Joseph, Spouse of Mary, Powerful Intercessor, Guardian of the Church, long title, by Father Serafino Lanzetta, published by Sophia Institute. Okay, so then that's a good one. So we just celebrated March 19th, Feast of St. Joseph, but we're going to be celebrating Feast of St. Joseph the Worker on May 1st. So people have time to read it between the two St. Joseph feasts.
Yes, so definitely pick up the book, and you have time to read it before that.
Lots of time. Okay, good. And then you got a second book, which is not a children's book.
I cannot stress enough, this is not a children's book. Yes, It is a graphic novel, but it's not necessarily for children. This one is called The Exorcism at 1600 Penn. And for those who don't know, that is the address for the White House.
Okay.
And this story takes place where United States of America has their first sitting woman president, and it's kind of the story, with the exorcism around demonic possession, how in this one, social media can sort of feed fear and hate. It questions one's faith in the book. There's a lot of like sort of heavy elements. No major spoiler. The president has 2 children. One starts to experience demonic possession. And the other sibling has sort of renewed faith, has to, grapple with the realities of being a teenager, finding themselves trying to figure out their faith. And even there's I don't know if I should tell that. I don't want to give anything away.
No
but
spoilers.
There no spoilers, but there are really interesting elements of, questioning one's faith when faced with a dire evil, and even when you can sort of see it, but trying to explain it to those who may not have the faith, or addressing it to someone who should have the faith, but they're living through their own doubting Thomas moment.
Okay.
There's a lot to it.
But it's not a Catholic book. Like it's not.
It's
the
not a
author
Catholic
is not
book.
Catholic.
As far as I understand, the author isn't, but it's presented with sort of Catholic elements. But I think as people of faith, reading it can be very interesting. And for me, looking at it, it can really spoke to how social media can sort of impact
Interesting.
us, and not in the good way of like just what it means to like feed these sort of things.
Interesting.
And how it can kind of have an impact. But
Interesting.
Great
Now,
art, interesting story.
Yeah, no, and again, graphic novels are not for everybody, but they are for a lot of people. And there's some graphic novels that I think are phenomenal. You're able to tell the story in a way that you wouldn't be able to tell just by a regular kind of prose novel.
Correct.
And I'm going to put you on the spot because you're not obviously an exorcism expert, but would you say that, is there like exorcisms, like do you think that that part of the novel is treated accurately, factually, or is it kind of loosely, like does it present the church in a good way?
It's I would say it does. There's no damning thing against the church. Otherwise, I would say don't bother with it. There's elements of, just from previous books I've read, there's elements where they do touch on like what would be part of the process. And then other elements that are a bit more stretched and fantastical. And there's going to be a specific quote from a priest where if you've, say, watched certain movies, you'll know exactly the quote he's using. So it is a fiction. So they'll try to tie some of what is to, the fantastical. So,
But basically you're saying that it's still a good way for those of us who are of faith to maybe consider other elements, and maybe if people want to find out more about exorcisms or about demonic activity, they can do so. And the connection with social media, I think that is interesting to me. So that's The Exorcism at 1600 Pen by Hannah Rose May. She's the writer, and Vanessa Del Rey is the illustrator, and it's published by IDW Publishing. Jermaine, thank you.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
You always surprise me with the titles you come up with, and there's always something. They're very different titles, but at the same time, Saint Joseph is the terror of demons, so maybe there is a connection there.
There we go.
All right, thank you so much, Jermaine. Have a blessed Holy Week and Easter season, and we look forward to next time for more book suggestions from you.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Jermaine Bagnall is the founder and head of content at 70 Media. You can follow him at Jermaine Bagnall. Coming up in our second half hour, a conversation with our featured artist of the week, Joe Zambon. So don't go anywhere. Welcome to the Salt and Light Hour Part 2. I'm Deacon Pedro.
It's a journey into the heart of, I think, God the Father. I don't want to say it's about my own fatherhood, because I'm not really writing any songs about being a dad necessarily. But it's a lot of like just kind of a return to, I think, my own prayer life in the last couple years. And then there's just a lot of these songs were just born out of kind of that rediscovering of the love of the Father, and putting yourself in the posture of just praying with Him.
That is Joe Zambon speaking about his new album, Man of Sorrows. And we're going to hear a lot more about that. And also, we're going to get a chance to get to know Joe a bit better. But before that, here's Joe Zambon with Abba from his new album, Man of Sorrows.
I prepare a room for you, a place we can talk, I quiet the noise outside, lay my head to your heart, Abba, Father, what do you want me to know? Abba, Father, what do you want? I am starting to know your voice, like the words in my head. I quiet the noise inside. I hear you speak in my quiet. Abba, Father, what do you want me to know? Abba, Father, what do you want? Abba, Father, what do you want me to know? Abba, Father, what do you want?
We're listening to Joe Zambon with Abba from his new album, Man of Sorrows. Joe Zambon is one of the most beloved and well-known Canadian singers, songwriters, and worship leaders who has been on this program several times, but we haven't heard from him since 2017, and that's because around that time, Joe was getting married and starting a family, and so the music writing had slowed down. But now, Joe's long-anticipated new album, Man of Sorrows, is out, just in time for Easter. Joe was in Toronto a few months ago, and I am so happy that I had the chance to speak with him about Man of Sorrows, and in particular, what it means to be a father. Joe, welcome. It's so good to see you again.
Thank you. It's great to be seen.
I have to say this because you moved to the States, and it was like, I'm exaggerating, but like my arm was torn off. It was like, I'm never going to see this guy again.
Some people, I mean, they get up and go. I've always been of the opinion, I mean, if you continue to live your Catholic faith, you'll probably bump into people again. So it's kind of, again, cool being back in Toronto after, oh man, has it been like 8 years, 7 years, something like that?
Yeah, so you grew up near Ottawa.
Yep.
Tell me about that. What was it like growing up? Catholic family, I guess?
Yeah, Catholic family, 3 brothers. My older brother's a priest now. Younger brothers, was also working for CCO, and kind of, we've all done different ministries, but I think, yeah, that's a product of, a faithful home. And yeah, growing up on a farm, you learn hard work. Got to go to a Catholic high school. Eventually then, yeah, net ministries, undergrad in theology, York University, Toronto, and then, I mean, now I'm in roofing sales, but that's how life goes. It's a lot of cool things, but that's a little snippet of growing up. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And music is how we know you, but you went through net. So like, what drew you to net? Like, were you already doing music? I know you and your brother both do music. I don't know, was it a musical family?
Yeah, I mean, musical family, definitely, in the sense that my aunts and uncles all sing, and some of them play piano, and so there was always music in the home. So it's kind of always, I didn't really have a huge plan for my life. I didn't have a plan even, I was going to one day move to the States or all that kind of stuff. Or even with music, I never planned to do music in the capacity I was doing it, and still here for this opportunity. I enjoyed playing it. I'd take up little opportunities as they came, and eventually there's a recording opportunity, and then.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that, because I think that you go through an experience like net, and I think that, it makes you want to go deeper in your faith, and it's not uncommon for people to think, oh, maybe I'm even called to ministry or the ordained life, which might have been your case, I don't know, but I think I want to study theology. But I would think that you were already a musician, so growing up, you never thought, I'm going to be a professional musician?
No. I loved music, loved playing music, and it was actually on net that's really where I think I had the stirring of even just learning the heart of worship. So I was playing music, I was my top bands at the time probably, mostly secular bands, Dave Matthews and I don't even know, all the ones at the time, a lot of fingerstyle guitarists and stuff.
Yeah.
But eventually then I was into learning the heart of worship, and then playing more, but then also writing more music that's even, prayerful, worshipful at times.
Were you writing music as a teenager as well?
I would fool around, but I don't think I started writing really until after net. After my first year, that's when I recorded my first album, between my 2 years. So I started to see it just, it was this time when I would be just my own personal prayer, and then, songs would come up, and that's kind of where most of my songs then were kind of born, was just personal time. And so that's how I started just writing more, was just, as I kind of prayed more, or just was inspired by things I'd hear people say, and then I would want to say, hey, I want to remember that, let's put it into a song. And so I'd actually intentionally go off to try to write a song around a phrase or a prayer or something I heard from somebody else.
So the music then, as an extension of your prayer life, and very much kind of as you're growing in your faith, the music or the writing? Because I think that there's a difference between the lyrics and the music as well, right?
Sure, yeah. So the musical side, I'm always being inspired by other artists, other sounds, and so I'm always exploring my own musical sound. But then, the themes that I'm writing on, it's some of it I'm not necessarily going out and saying, I want to write an album on this. It's more here's my life, here's what's being stirred up, here's where the Spirit's really moving me to kind of reflect on. And as I would write, that's actually sometimes when I would get clarity about some area of my life or some question I had.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you about that, and I think we've talked about that before. That your music, it's if you just hear it, it doesn't sound like religious music or spiritual music. I mean, it's not like your typical love songs about Jesus.
Right. Yeah, and I've had people. I'm always, every album, I'm like, can someone please tell me what genre this is?
Nobody knows.
No, and the most recent album I just recorded, it's probably the most worshipful of like any album I've ever written, but it still has like, I mean, there's still stuff on there that's, I don't know, a Christian man writing a song about something, and so there's a perspective, and that's kind of where I think I'm, in terms of what I'm writing about, is it's more like a way to view life, a way to view a relationship, a way to view a situation, and it's from the Christian perspective, yeah.
So would you say that then, I mean, some songs I could use in worship.
Yeah.
Even, you know, you got songs from 10 years ago that we play at Mass.
Sure.
Or at adoration. Some songs are just fun songs that I can listen to in the car. So that's what you mean when you say, like, I'm not sure, like, what genre it is?
Yeah, because like some of it's just like kind of personal devotional music. I would never bring it into like, or I would never think like, oh, I'm writing this for the context of a liturgy, or even some sort of corporate worship like that. We're going to sing it all together. While some of them you could, and then some of them I just like. I mean, they're just fun songs, and I love also just goofing around and writing fun music. So
when you think about an album, how many albums is it? Like this new one is your, I don't know.
I don't know. I think I'm on 7.
I was going to say 6 or 7.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking of an album, like, are you always writing? Again, as an extension of your prayer life, you're always writing. At what point do you say this is an album, or do you think, or have you, like with Brothers or even The Loved One, I'm going to write an album about love because that's where I am in my life?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So leading up to this album, I probably hadn't written a song for almost like 6 years. And, you know, part of it is like I just got married and
I was going to say you've
like,
been busy.
It's also just having time. Like before I was probably turning an album around every 2 to 3 years, just because single man, I can be more intentional with that. I think it's sometimes more difficult when you got, family around and all those kind of things too. And you just have to be more intentional so that's what I had to do this time around. But I don't necessarily like, the Love Is album was kind of a unique thing because I was really in a season and I was just noticing that I was writing a lot on that. But usually it's kind of a conglomerate of a lot of different things. But sometimes there's usually at least a thread that kind of goes through the majority of the songs and that's where I'm like, this is an album. This is like an idea, and this is where I want to kind of like, this is what I want to share. These songs are going to make the cut, and they can kind of be presented in one package, rather than like, okay, I think there's like 3 ideas here that are so different that need to be fleshed out on their own.
You're listening to the Salt and Light Hour. I'm Deacon Pedro, and we're speaking with our featured artist of the week, Joe Zambon. I hadn't spoken with Joe in 6 years, and so that's where we continue. So 6 years, yes, you got married. How many kids now?
3 kids, yeah.
That's
3
beautiful.
boys, yeah.
Oh my gosh. How old?
6, 3, and he's turning 2 on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So yeah, 6, 3, 1.
Yeah, so you have a little more time now. So did you find that that was a stage in your life? So Joe Zambon, quote unquote, the musician or worship leader, Joe Zambon, the husband, the dad. Mm-hmm. That's what you were doing. And now you can maybe share the roles more? Like,
I'm still figuring it out. Like I'm grateful that I like took this leap, because the other side of it was the financial side. So every other project I've been able to fund myself. This one I had to do a Kickstarter, crowdfunder to just bring it to life, because I wouldn't have been able to do that without the support of people that like my music already. So it was just different. So I'm kind of just taking every album at a time, every song at a time. We'll see, what's down the road. Is there a way have I kind of figured out a little bit more to like have the balance of, work, family, and music, and where do they kind of all fit in? I'm still honestly just figuring that out.
Yeah, and even the crowdfunding, that takes time and effort and focus and all the marketing and all of that.
Yeah.
You're producing, I guess you're sort of producing your own albums.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you got 3 little kids, and you have to support a family. Mm-hmm. Lots of fun.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, they're all good things, and it's really, there becomes a bit of, discernment, and like, when can you add another thing onto the plate? And other things are like, I would have loved to have done this last album 2 years ago. I would have had to put something else aside, and everything else I couldn't do that.
Yeah,
So.
well, now's the time. I mean, what is it, Mother Teresa that said, like, how do I know what God wants me to be doing right now? And she said, well, whatever you're doing right now is what God wants you to do right now.
And if it's washing the dishes or cleaning up some puke, then it's like, that's what you got to be doing. So.
And that's all good things.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, and maybe, I don't even know if we've talked about this even before you got married, but did you consider religious life?
I was very open. I visited some Capuchins down in, where were they? New Jersey. And for that season of, singleness, I was trying to just throw my heart as wide open as I could to the Lord. I'm like, I'm open. And my big thing is like, you need to increase a little bit more. I need a little bit more desire inside. Like I'm open, but I don't really desire, and I'm not adverse to it. I'm not drawn into it more. And even as I have so many like friends in different religious orders and vocations, that, I saw, and I'm like, I really love like what they're doing here, or this charism here. I'm just not enough to say, okay, well now I need to like enter in, their discernment year or something. There was never enough to kind of push me that far. So that's why I was open. I never really got much further than just being open.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, yeah.
And growing the beard.
Yeah. I was like, I'll give the beard a shot. Like, I'll let it go. But even that, yeah, it was kind of funny that this, like a couple months before I met my wife, I had shaved my beard down to like a normal size. And I had shown her pictures afterwards, like, oh, this is what you would have seen if I met you like 3 months ago. She's like, I might not have looked at you, but here we are. Anyways, we're all worked out.
There you go.
Yeah.
Everything at its right time.
Yes.
At its right time.
Totally.
So tell me about the new album. I mean, we've heard, at least I have, and I know a lot of people since you started crowdfunding. It seems like a year ago almost. I don't know, maybe longer.
Yeah, not quite, but it's been a couple of months for sure. Yeah.
So,
the journey, yeah.
so what's different about it? What excites you about it? What can we look forward to?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing it's a journey into the heart of, I think, God the Father. I don't want to say it's about my own fatherhood, because like I'm not really writing any songs about being a dad necessarily, but it's a lot of like just kind of a return to, I think, my own prayer life in the last couple years, and then there's just a lot of these songs were just born out of kind of that rediscovering of the love of the Father, and putting yourself in the posture of just praying with Him. So I mean, again, like there's a couple songs kind of in that direction. There's a song they're called Abba, House of God. But then even too, the first song I wrote that like kind of started all of the writing. The first song I wrote after the 6 years was called Man of Sorrows. And that's the one I even like used in the crowdfunder. And it was really just like, I felt there was a kind of numbness in my own heart. There was a kind of, I just kind of lost a little bit of fire. And I wrote that song during a Holy Week. And it was just this encounter with the Man of Sorrows, and how really encountering, I think, that suffering Christ, how any parts of you that seem numb or dead, lifeless, I feel like for myself, that's where He was able to revive it, restore it, and make it warm again. So
I'm thinking Dead Man Rise.
Yeah, it's a kind of Dead Man Rise, yeah, in many ways. This album has a couple of different sounds to it, but I think it's still kind of my own similar kind of classic style, and yeah,
The Zambon style.
Yeah.
Surely where you are in your life as a dad is an influence to how you see your relationship to God the Father. So it's not like you can not write a song about God being the Father without you being a father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like a term, another song on the album's called El Shaddai. And like
Yeah.
El Shaddai is the Almighty, or God Almighty. And for me, it's like, I really want to provide for my family. I want to make sure that, I'm providing. But knowing like anything that I receive is already a gift from God, the provider. And so really like I take that, like that was like basically a prayer I had in my work because I was doing like roofing sales at the time. And so I was like, I need sales, and I was like, look, Lord, you need to provide for like my work, which is going to provide for my kids. And so with every door I would knock, I would be like, I'm knocking this for this child, one of my kids, I'll say their name, but knowing that like he takes care of me in that kind of way. So yeah, it's hard to now separate, my relationship with God the Father and not see my own like fathering and, imaging God the Father to my own children. And
of course,
it's all wrapped up for sure.
I even think that the numbness also, I mean, like you get so busy with the husbanding and the parenting, and that's going to affect your prayer life. Mm-hmm. Even if you're trying to pray with the kids, and it's like everything is just chaos. And I don't know what that looks like in your family, but I know what it looked like in mine. So that could lead to a feeling of numbness that is kind of related to being a dad.
Oh yeah, all of it. It touches on all of it, and there's definitely even just a new, like, perspective on mercy. I think as you raise kids, because how patient God is with us, and like I see myself in these kids that like how I kind of long for the Father who is more patient with me too. And I'm like, oh, I need to draw from that I'm not patient with my kids, but God is like eternally patient with me and gentle and kind, yet firm, but he's also like those things that I'm desiring as a parent. So yeah, it's a rediscovering too, just of like who God is and his like who he is and who I am, all wrapped up in this like then family dynamic, marriage and kids, and it's a gift. Yeah, what a gift.
Being a father to children also helps you figure out what kind of child you are to your father.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do I, my kid does something wrong, does he come and, confess it? Or does it, is he inclined to run and hide? And it's like, oh yeah, I'm kind of like that as well. But why would he fear me? Like I'm not gonna the fact that he's gonna come and confess it, I'm really grateful, and I'm gonna help him along, as well. So it is, a reflection too of like, how am I towards my own Heavenly Father.
Well, Joe, thank you. It's so good to see you, and I'm glad we had this chance to chat, and always love listening to your music. So I hope that the selling roofing doesn't take precedence over the other parts of your life.
Yeah, I hope there's still more room for music in the midst of everything. So yeah, thanks for having me out.
Man of Sorrows is out now, March 29th. You can listen to it and purchase it anywhere you get music. And to learn more about Joe Zambon, go to his website, joezambonmusic.com. Here now is Joe Zambon with the title track of his new album, Man of Sorrows.
What do you do when the fire burns out? What do you do when the heart grows numb? When joy seems far and hope turns to dark, from where does my help come from? Where do you turn when your friends walk out? When his promises and my plans aren't one? When prayer feels just like echo top, from where does my help come from?
We're listening to Joe Zambon with Man of Sorrows from his new album of the same name, and that will take us to the end of the program. The best place to listen to the Salt and Light Hour and to watch Salt and Light TV live is on the Salt and Light Plus app. Be sure to download it and take us with you wherever you go. Be sure also to tune in next week for our Easter special featuring the music of Father Michael Jonkas. If you don't know who he is, just think On Eagle's Wings. So that's going to be our Easter special next week with Michael Jonkas. Today, let's continue to pray for peace. Let's pray for peace in the world, peace in the Middle East, peace in Ukraine. Let's not forget Ukraine and so many other places where there is conflict. But most importantly, as we begin Holy Week, let's pray for peace in our hearts. We need peace in our hearts. Let's also pray for Australia and for the cause of servant of God, Eileen O'Connor. Let's also pray for fathers, that we would all learn to have the heart of the Father. And also I pray for you, my dear listeners, as we start Holy Week. May you have a blessed journey towards Easter. Thank you for being with me today. I pray that this program has blessed you. Please pray for me, and don't forget to pray for each other and take care of each other. I'm Deacon Pedro, and this has been the Salt and Light Hour.
And from your side, and from your side, and from your side, again, bathe me. Again, bathe